"You may give it to me," said the butler, "and wait in the passage." "No," said Clara Mead. She said it without heat, standing in the great cold hall at Blackmere, with the November wet still on her hem and a hired chaise going back down the avenue behind her, and the butler, who had worked 40 years in a house where nobody said no to anything, looked at her properly for the first time. "I was told to put it into his hand," she said, "not into yours, and not onto a salver. If his grace will not see me, I shall take it back to Sussex unopened, and tell my uncle he must come himself. Which is the outcome the whole of my family has spent 4 days arranging not to happen. So you may show me in, or you may show me out. I am not going to stand in a passage." She was 24 years old, and she had nothing whatever behind her. No dowry, no beauty anyone had troubled to notice, no mother, no father, and £40 a year of her own, which was the entire extent of what she owned in the world, and she had been sent 190 miles across England precisely because she was the person in that household whose humiliation would cost the family least. They had told her so, though not in those words. Her aunt had said, "He cannot very well shout at you, Clara. There is nothing of you to shout at." The butler showed her in. The study at Blackmere faced north over 11 miles of moor going brown under a low sky, and Gideon Cardew, 5th Duke of Blackmere, did not stand up when she entered, and did not speak, and did not so much as put down his pen. He was 37. He had gone grey at the temples at 26, all in one winter, and had never got the colour back, and the effect of it with a face that young was the first thing anybody noticed and the first thing anybody was afraid of. He had learned, in 11 years, that a quiet voice frightened men more reliably than a loud one. And he had used the discovery the way a man uses any tool that works, until the using of it had become the whole of what he was. He let the silence run. It was a thing he did. Most people filled it within 20 seconds, and what they put into it told him everything he needed. Clara Mead stood with her hands folded and let it run with him. She did not look at the ceiling, or the portraits, or the fire, or the moor. She looked at him, steadily and without any particular expression, in the manner of a person waiting at a coach office, and after some considerable time she reached into her reticule and took out a small stitched memorandum book and a pencil and wrote something in it, briefly, and put it away again. Gideon Cardew put down his pen. "What did you write?" "The hour, Your Grace. 20 minutes past 3. She met his eye. "I keep an account of my days. It is a habit of people nobody asks anything of. If I am ever required to say how long I stood in this room, I should prefer to be accurate. Something happened in the Duke of Blackmere's chest that had not happened in a very long while. And he did not enjoy it. Give me the letter." She crossed the room and put it into his hand, which was what she had been sent to do, and then she stepped back 3 paces and folded her hands again, and he broke the seal and read 4 sentences and understood that his betrothal of 14 months standing had ended 11 days ago in a post-chaise on the Great North Road with a music master named Peverell. He read it twice. His face did not alter at all. "Your uncle writes that Miss Anstey has been overcome by an illness of the nerves and is retired to the coast. Yes, is that true?" And here the narrator asks the listener to attend, because everything that followed in the lives of these 2 people came out of the next 4 seconds. Clara Mead had been instructed, on the gravel at Anstey Court, by her aunt. With her uncle standing behind and nodding, "Say the nerves. Say nothing else. Whatever he asks you, say the nerves." "No," said Clara. "She has run away to Scotland with her music master, and they will be married by now. And I am sorry to be the one telling you, and I am sorrier that nobody with a claim on your friendship would come and do it. You were told to say the nerves." "I was told a great many things on the gravel. I have decided against most of them." She did not drop her eyes. "You are entitled to the truth, Your Grace, It is nearly the only thing anyone is entitled to, and it costs my family nothing whatever to give it to you, which is why I cannot account for their refusing." The Duke of Blackmere sat looking at a woman he could not, at that moment, have described if his life had depended on it. Brown hair, brown dress, a plain, quiet face, and asked the question he had not intended to ask. Why did she run? "Your Grace, I do not think. You have been honest for a minute and a half. Do not stop now that it has become expensive." Clara Mead drew one breath. "Because she was afraid of you," she said. "Not of marriage. Of you, specifically. She has been afraid since the contracts were signed, and she cried for a fortnight in September, and when I asked her what she thought you would do to her, she said that everybody knows what the Duke of Blackmere does to people who are in his way, and she did not want to find out from the inside." Clara's voice was perfectly level. "She is 19. She had never met you above twice. She believed what the county believes, and the county believes it because you have spent 11 years finding it convenient that they should." The fire moved in the grate. Somewhere far off in the house, a door closed. "Get out," said the Duke of Blackmere very quietly. "Yes, Your Grace," said Clara Mead, and went. He did not send her away that night, because it was dark and raining and he was not, whatever Sussex believed, a man who put women out into the moor after 4 o'clock. And he did not send her away in the morning either, because at 9 o'clock his aunt, the Dowager Duchess, had installed the girl in the blue room with a maid and a fire, and had begun telling her about the drains. And Gideon had learned young not to fight his aunt over lodgings, and he did not send her away on the 3rd day, because of what happened on the 2nd. He had left the charity ledger open on the study table, a great calf-bound thing. 11 years of quarterly disbursements to schools, almshouses, curates, and widows, which his man of business rendered to him every Michaelmas, and which he signed without reading, the way he signed everything. Clara Mead, sent to the study to wait for an answer to carry back to Sussex, waited beside it for 50 minutes and read it, because she had kept her uncle's household books for 9 years and could no more leave a column unread than a musician can leave a wrong note unheard. When the Duke came in, she said, "Your Grace, what was Ashgrove?" He stopped in the doorway. "There is a line here," she said, turning the book. "Ashgrove, £120, quarterly. It is paid every quarter from 1794 to the Michaelmas of 1809, and then it stops. Not reduced. Stopped in the middle of a year, and the column ruled off and nothing put in its place. Everything else in 11 years is continuous." She looked up. "It is the only discontinuity in the book." What was it? Gideon Cardew stood in his own doorway and discovered that he did not know. He had signed the order. He remembered the shape of the day it was signed, the 4th week of October, 1809, 6 months after his father died, and left him a dukedom, 19,000 a year, and a debt of £80,000 nobody had warned him of. A 26-year-old man who had been drinking for a fortnight and had a stack of papers a foot high, and a man of business at his elbow saying these can all be dealt with, Your Grace, if you will only give me a free hand. He remembered writing at the bottom of a page, Mr. Quillen to settle the Ashgrove matter as he sees fit. He had not asked what it was then. In 11 years he had never once asked, and the not asking had been so complete, so carefully maintained, so like a room in his own house that he simply never entered, that a plain young woman turning a page in front of him had walked straight into it in under a minute, because she did not know it was not to be walked into. Ashgrove, he said, is a moor holding on the west edge of this estate. Are there people on it? There were 41 families on it, said the Duke of Blackmere, in October of 1809. Clara Mead closed the ledger very gently. Then I think you had better find out, she said. Mr. Absalom Quillen came up from York within the week, which told the Duke more than anything Quillen afterwards said. He was 58 and had served the 4th Duke since 1798 and the 5th since the day of the funeral, and he had the particular ease of a man who has been indispensable for so long that he has stopped troubling to conceal that he knows it. He was courteous to Miss Mead. He was courteous the way one is courteous to a piece of furniture that has been moved into an inconvenient place. Ashgrove was a distressed holding, Your Grace. The rents were 4 years in arrear, and the ground would not carry sheep. It was cleared, and let to Mr. Hutchby for grazing, and it has returned 600 a year since. Your Grace signed the authority. I have it in the strong box, in your own hand. Cleared when? In November. In November. Gideon repeated the word without inflection. On to what? Quillen's courtesy did not falter. That was not within my instruction, Your Grace. That night the Duke of Blackmere went into the muniment room himself with a branch of candles for the first time in his life. And Clara Mead went with him because he asked her to, and because she had said she would, and between them they took down 11 years of Ashgrove papers, and found that there were almost none. A rent roll to Lady Day 1809. A memorandum of the letting to Hutchby. Nothing between. Nothing except one item at the bottom of the bundle, which Clara lifted out and turned over and held up into the candlelight. It was a letter. It was addressed in a clerical hand to His Grace, the Duke of Blackmere. At Blackmere, it was postmarked the 19th of December, 1809, and its seal had never been broken. It was received, she said. It was carried into this house and put in this box and never given to you. Gideon did not take it from her. He looked at it for a long time, a small square of paper 11 years old with his own name on it, and the woman holding it saw quite clearly that this man who had frightened 3 counties for a decade could not make himself put out his hand. I cannot, he said. No, Clara agreed. Not tonight. She set it down on the table between them, and neither of them moved for some seconds. And the space between them was the width of a muniment table, and had been getting narrower all week without either of them consenting to it. Miss Mead. His voice had gone rough in a way the county would not have recognized. I have spent 11 years being the man everyone believes I am, because it was easier than the alternative, and because it worked. And I have made a great deal of money and lost every single friend I had, and until Tuesday afternoon I would have told you the bargain was a fair one. I am not certain what you have done to me. I am fairly certain I am not going to recover from it. Your Grace, I am sorry, he said. For Tuesday. For telling you to get out. For a good many other, stop apologizing. Clara Mead put both hands flat on the muniment table. You are not the one I was wronged by, and I am not the one you wronged. There are 41 families somewhere in the North Riding, and 11 of them buried somebody in the winter of 1809, and every one of them would be very glad to know that the Duke of Blackmere spent this evening feeling sorry in a warm room. Now tell me what you intend to do. He did not answer her that night. He answered her at 4 in the morning, alone, at the desk in the study with the fire out, in the one scene of this story that had no witness at all. A Duke of 37 writing a letter to the curate of Ashgrove, a name he had found on a rent roll of 1809, belonging to a man who had been 7 years dead, though he did not know that yet, and burning it, and writing it again, and burning that 6 times, because every version he could produce came out either as a defense or as a performance of remorse, and he could not for the life of him find the third thing. At 5:30 he stopped trying to write it well and wrote it badly instead. 9 lines, no flourishes, beginning Madam, I did not know. Which is not an excuse, but a confession, since it was my business to know. And sealed it, and rang for a groom, and stood in the cold hall in his shirt sleeves, watching the man ride out in the dark. Clara Mead saw him from the stair. He did not know she was there. And she went back to the blue room and sat on the edge of the bed with her heart going in a way she profoundly disapproved of, and took out her memorandum book and wrote in it, 5:30. He sent it. They rode out to Ashgrove on the 26th with a groom 40 yards behind them because the Dowager Duchess had views. And it was 8 miles west over ground that got worse the whole way. There was nothing there. That is the thing neither of them had prepared for. Clara had expected ruin, burnt roofs, fallen walls, something with a shape to be angry at. What there was instead was a long green fold of moor with a beck running down it and 400 sheep on it and, if you knew to look, a faint rectangular swelling in the turf every 100 yards or so, where a house had stood, 31 of them, going up the fold like stitches. They walked the horses up it. Neither of them spoke for a quarter of an hour. "Say something," Gideon said at last. "Anything at all. I have discovered I can bear a great deal more from you than from the inside of my own head." "I was thinking that it is very beautiful," Clara said, "and that I am ashamed of noticing." "Do not be. It was beautiful when they lived on it." He stopped his horse. 600 a year. That is what this is. I have signed for it 11 times without reading it, and it has been paying for the wine I have not enjoyed drinking. "Your Grace, Gideon," Clara looked at him. "I have not been called it above 9 times since 1809, he said, "and 8 of them were my aunt. I am aware it is improper. I find I have stopped caring what is proper somewhere between Tuesday and this morning, and it has been a considerable relief, and I would very much like to hear it once." "Gideon," said Clara Mead. Neither of them moved. The wind came up the fold and took a strand of hair loose across her face, and he lifted his hand and stopped it halfway, 4 inches short, with the whole of the North Riding standing round them and a groom 40 yards down the hill, and let it fall again. "There," he said, unevenly, "you see. 11 years of being told I take whatever I want." "I never believed that," said Clara. "You do not take. You settle. You find the fastest way for a thing to stop being your difficulty, and you sign it." She turned her horse to face him. "That is what frightens people, Your Grace, and it is not the same as cruelty, and it is a great deal harder to cure, because cruelty at least knows it is doing something." He absorbed that the way a man absorbs a blow he has walked into deliberately. "Nobody has ever spoken to me in my life the way you have spoken to me for 9 days. "No," Clara agreed. "That is because you are very frightening and I am very poor. And I worked out on Tuesday afternoon that you cannot take anything from me that Sussex has not already taken, and it made me the freest person in your house." She gathered the reins. "It is a great advantage, being of no consequence. I would not recommend it, but it is an advantage." They rode home in the dark, apart, saying nothing, and Clara Mead wrote in her book that night, 26th, 8 miles, 31 houses. He stopped his hand, and then she looked at what she had written for a long while and did not cross it out. Quillen struck 3 days later. He did 2 things in one afternoon, and they were both good. First, the Ashgrove receipt book, the register of the constable's disbursements for the removal. The one document that named the 41 and said where they had gone was found to be missing from the muniment room, and Quillen reported its loss himself, with regret, having discovered it. It could not be proved against him. It was simply gone, and with it every name. Second, he laid before the Duke, in front of the Dowager Duchess and 2 magistrates who had come to dine, a letter in Sir Wilfrid Anstey's hand, the letter of introduction Clara had carried north, which she had never been shown, and which described the bearer as my wife's niece, a young person of no consequence whatever, who may be sent back at your Grace's convenience or not, as suits. "I produce it," said Quillen pleasantly, "only so that your Grace may be aware what the family themselves think of her, before the county forms a view of what your Grace thinks of her. A young woman of no fortune, living in a bachelor duke's house 4 weeks after his betrothal collapsed. Sussex will make one story of that. There is no second story available. There was a silence in that dining room of a quality nobody there had experienced before. Gideon Cardew set down his glass. "Miss Mead," he said, "will you marry me?" The Dowager Duchess put her hand over her mouth. One of the magistrates said "Good God" out loud, and Clara Mead, 24 years old, a person of no consequence whatever, in a brown dress at the foot of the table, understood in about 1 second exactly what was being offered and exactly why, and did the hardest thing she ever did in her life. "No, Your Grace," she said. "Clara, no." She stood up. "You have just been told that protecting me will cost you your reputation. And you have offered to marry me before the pudding, and you believe that is love. It is not. It is the same thing you have done for 11 years. You have found the fastest way to make an unpleasant thing stop." Her voice shook once, and she took hold of it. "If I marry you tonight, you will have paid for Ashgrove with a wedding, and you will never open that letter, and in 20 years you will be exactly the man Georgiana Anstey ran to Scotland to avoid, and I will have helped you become him. I will not. I would rather be talked of in Sussex for the rest of my life." She looked down the table at the two magistrates and the dowager and the man of business. "He has a letter in this house he has not opened since 1809, she said. "Ask him about that instead." Then she left the room, and left the house the next morning at 7 o'clock in a hired gig, and the Duke of Blackmere did not stop her. Because she had been perfectly clear, and because for the first time in 11 years he had understood a refusal as something other than an obstacle. Sussex was not slow. By the 10th of December, Sir Wilfrid Anstey had written to say that his niece had disgraced herself, and the house at Anstey Court was closed to her. Her £40 a year was her own, and she was welcome to live on it. Clara took 2 rooms over a stationer's in Malton at 11 shillings a week, and pawned her mother's garnet cross in the 2nd week of January. And there is no use pretending otherwise. She was cold that winter, and frightened, and there were nights she lay in the dark and could not think of one single reason she had said no to a duke. She did not write to him. She began 4 letters and burned all 4, which she would have found funny if she had known what he had done in November, and she did not know, because that was rather the point of the arrangement. Twice she got as far as the York coach office and turned back at the step. That was the whole of the cost, and she paid it in full over 11 weeks, in 2 cold rooms above a stationer's, and the narrator will not soften it. And Quillen in York played his last card in February. He put it to the Duke plainly in writing that he held the original authority of October 1809 over the Duke's own signature, that a copy would go to the Morning Chronicle and another to the Duke's colleagues in the Lords the moment proceedings were commenced against him, and that Blackmere might have his silence, his continued service, and his 600 a year from Hutchby's grazing, or he might have a public ruin of a completeness that no dukedom in England had suffered in living memory. It was, as blackmail goes, entirely sound. Quillen had been rich for 11 years on exactly one asset, which was being the only man alive who knew what his master had signed. And he had no intention of retiring from it. He had, however, made one mistake, and it was the mistake everybody in this story kept making. He had never once asked what the plain young woman was writing in her book. Rent day at Blackmere fell on the 9th of April, and there were 211 people in the great hall, tenants, the steward, the parson, 4 magistrates, the Dowager Duchess, and Mr. Absalom Quillen with his strong box at his elbow, when the Duke of Blackmere stood up on the dais and did not open the rent books at all. He held up a small square of paper with a broken seal. "This was written to me on the 17th of December, 1809, by Mr. Elias Broom, curate of Ashgrove, and delivered into this house, and it was not given to me, and I opened it in this room 11 days ago." His voice was quiet, which was habit, and it carried to the back wall, which was also habit. "I am going to read it to you, and then I am going to tell you what I did, and you may do what you like with it afterward." He read it. 900 people in the North Riding heard the substance of it within a week, and it is not necessary to set it all down here. What matters is that it was 4 paragraphs long, that it was courteous, that it asked why the quarterly £120 had not come at Michaelmas, and whether it might be restored, and that it mentioned, in the last paragraph, almost apologetically, that 11 persons removed from the holding in November had died before Christmas, of whom 4 were children, and gave their names. Then the Duke of Blackmere said, "I signed the order. I was 26, and I did not read it, and I have not looked at it since. And the difference between me and the man who executed it is a difference of comfort, not of guilt. I am not asking this room to think better of me. I am telling you because I have been permitted, for 11 years, to be feared instead of examined, and I have found that a very good bargain, and I am closing the account." And into the silence after that, from the back of the hall, a woman's voice said clearly, 41 families. Clara Mead came up the length of that hall in a brown dress she had turned twice, with her memorandum book in her hand, and every person in the room turned to watch her do it. "The receipt book was destroyed," she said when she reached the dice, "but I copied the discontinued payments column on the 23rd of November, before it was. Because I copy things, and I have spent 4 months writing letters." She opened the book. 31 of the 41 families are living. 19 of them are within 20 miles of this hall. I have their names, and the parishes they went to, and 11 of them have written back to me, and 2 of them are standing at the back of this room now, and one of them is Mrs. Elizabeth Broom, who buried her husband the curate in 1813, and who has never in 11 years had an answer to that letter until she had one in January, badly written, from a man who did not sign it with his title. She put the book down on the dais. "Your Grace, Mr. Quillen holds your authority of October 1809 and intends to publish it. I would publish it first. I would print it under your own name in the Chronicle, with the 41 names beside it and the sums you propose to pay. And then he has nothing at all in that box but a piece of paper you have already read out loud." She turned to look at the man of business, who had risen. "And you should know, sir, that I have written to the bank at York, because a man who has taken 600 a year in grazing rents through a company he owns for 11 years leaves a mark on a ledger, and I have kept household books since I was 15, and I do not require a solicitor to find it. It is on the 4th page. 211 people watched Absalom Quillen understand that he had been beaten by a person of no consequence whatever. He was prosecuted in the summer assizes of 1821 for embezzlement to the sum of £4,600, convicted and served 7 years, and died in Lincolnshire in 1834, in the house of a nephew who did not much want him. But that came later. What happened in the hall was that the Duke of Blackmere came down off the dais in front of 211 people and stopped an arm's length from Clara Mead and did not touch her. In December, he said, "You told me that if you married me I would never open that letter." Yes. I have opened it. I have written to 19 families, and I shall write to the others when you tell me where they are, and it will cost this estate about £11,000. And I intend to do the whole of it, whether you ever speak to me again or not. Because you were right, and I have known you were right since the moment you said it, and it took me until January to stop being angry about it. He drew breath. I am not asking you to save me. I have discovered that I can do it, slowly and badly and alone. I am asking because in 4 months I have not had 1 hour in which I did not want you in the room. Clara, marry me now, for the reason you would not marry me then." "Yes," said Clara Mead. He kissed her in front of the tenantry, the parson, 4 magistrates, and his aunt. And the noise that went up in the great hall at Blackmere was heard in the stable yard. Nobody at Anstey Court could ever afterward explain it. So Wilfred told the story for 20 years and never once got it right, because the only version that made sense to him was one in which the girl had been clever, and she had not been clever. She had merely declined to lie on the gravel, and then declined to lie in the study, and then declined a dukedom on a point of principle, and each of those had been the plainest thing available to her at the time. They were married in the September of 1821, quietly, in the church at Ashgrove, which had a new roof on it. On a bright morning a year after that, the Duchess of Blackmere sat in the study that faced north over 11 miles of moor, doing the accounts, because she would not give them up, and her husband had long since stopped suggesting it. The moor was green that year. The Ashgrove holding carried 44 families again on 21-year leases at a rent that made Mr. Hutchby write 2 furious letters, and the quarterly £120 had been restored and backdated, and Mrs. Elizabeth Broom lived in the second cottage from the beck and came to the house on Thursdays. Over the study mantel, in a plain frame under glass, hung a single sheet of paper in a clerical hand, dated the 17th of December 1809, its broken seal still attached. Gideon came in at 11 with their son on his shoulder, 4 months old, and outraged about it, and stood looking at the frame the way he did perhaps once a week. "You will wear it out with looking," Clara said, without lifting her pen. "I keep it there so that I will." She finished the column and ruled it off and set down the pen and turned round in the chair to look at the man who had once let a silence run at her for 4 minutes to find out what she was made of. "They sent me because it did not matter who they sent," she said. "I have thought about that a great deal, and I have decided I am glad of it. A person nobody looks at gets to see everything. I looked at you," said the Duke of Blackmere. "You did," said Clara. Eventually, at 20 minutes past 3, I have it written down,